Hi everyone, hope you're all having a fabulous day. I want a quick chat about brain health. So I just want a little anecdote. I was in a play a few years ago, and when I was at home and I was rehearsing my lines, I had no problems. I would get to rehearsal and I would forget my darn lines. I kept thinking, what the hell is this? And as you know, because I love kinesiology, I actually got someone on the table at work because it was just easier to get one of my team to help me out. So Renergy, I got Renergy on the table and I got her to be me while I was doing a surrogate balance on myself. And it was funny because I was going through all the memory pathways, and of course things were a bit all over the place, and there was a fair bit of stress in there. And by the time it got to me checking my supplements, it was sort of hilarious because there's a substance called phosphatidylserine and phosphatidylcholine. They both work similarly. What they do is, your neurons in the brain, they actually help to coat the neurons so that when the brain is firing, it's firing correctly. Because you can imagine if the brain, it's sort of like a mismatch, and it's not really like this, but it's a little bit like this. If there's a mismatch, then you sort of can't remember things as easily. So anyway, it was sort of funny because I got to the spot with the supplements and muscle tested up that I needed 8 phosphatidylserine per day, which is a massive dose, and it was just sort of amusing to me. But anyway, when my friend Linda and I first discovered Phos Serine years and like 20 years ago as a supplement, and I can't remember, but it was really expensive at the time, say $100 for a tub, of 150 grams. Oh my gosh, when we had that product, it just felt like our brains were lit up and sparking and just working really well. But because I've been working with brains, with the LEAP program for so long, like 20 years or nearly 20 years now, and I muscle test what people need, it always depends on what's going on in their life. So obviously, if stress is going on, then quite often my favourite things are things like Resilian, Relaxan, Stressan. So products that actually help to calm stress down. Because if you're running on cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline, those type of things, then cortisol particularly can shut down short-term memory. So I've only got a sec. But basically, if you've got high stress in your life, you've got to calm the stress down or your memory isn't going to be great. If you are under a lot of oxidative stress, so if you are drinking too much coffee, having too much sugar, having high levels of stress, and you might be having too many, you might need antioxidants. So things like, basically nutrients. There are nutrients out there that help with oxidation or antioxidant energy. So once again, there are tests. I use the oligoscan, but there's lots of tests that find out whether you're oxidizing in your body and messing with the cells. If you are depressed or anxious, then basically you can start playing around with those hormones. Like things like 5-HTP is an antidepressant nutrient because it's one of the cofactors that helps to make serotonin. There are nutrients that help to boost your dopamine. So if you're not enjoying life, why would your body bother laying down memory? It's sort of like, there are some people whose memory is shocking until they love something and then they can remember everything. So I remember this kid years ago who his mum was bringing him to me to do the LEAP program on the brain integration work that I do, and he could remember every single Pokemon and all of the statistics and everything around Pokemon. Couldn't jolly remember his maths, but he had no interest. So what we love, we tend to remember. Just interesting. So things like 5-HTP, pre-DOP, so things that actually help to build dopamine in the brain, they can be really beneficial. And of course, the whole thing about fish oils. Now, the thing about fish oils is that lots of products actually have high levels of mercury and other heavy metals. So you've got to watch those ones. But if you do get a fully cleansed product, there are places in the world that actually fully cleanse their fish oils. They're the ones you've got to go for. Because we get a lot of toxins from our fish oil products. So things like the DHA, so in fish oils there's DHA and EPA, 2 of the major ingredients. EPA is anti-inflammatory, DHA regenerates the brain, generally. So if there's actually been brain damage, say a concussion or something, then you might actually need the DHA. And then generally it's 2 grams per day of DHA or 2 grams per day of EPA. That's a therapeutic dose to be anti-inflammatory or pro-brain building. The other thing about EPA is that when you get about 2 grams a day of EPA in the fish oils, then that's basically also the dose that starts boosting serotonin. So you start reducing inflammation in the body, serotonin starts to lift. So, that's just, oh yeah, and of course I love things like Brahmi and Gingko. So Brahmi's good for long-term memory, Ginkgo's good for short-term memory, but Ginkgo's also good for circulation. Brahmi has been researched, certainly here at the Queensland University, and they're finding that it is really good for anxiety as well. So things with Brahmi and Gingko combinations in them are great for short and long-term stress as well as for anxiety. So they're just a few ideas with brain nutrition that they're probably amongst my favourites. Oh, and I do, of course, have people who have had strokes and stuff. So once again, if you have something majorly traumatic like a stroke, you might have switched on your genes. So once again, thinking Brock shots or sulforaphane, so your sulfora clear, that sort of thing, to sort of start to switch back on the genes so that you're anti-inflammatory again and pro-detox, and so that you can start healing. And of course, things like the Stem Enhance Ultra to get those stem cells back into your brain. Anyway, food for thought. Have a great weekend. See you guys.